It's day 214. It's also December 4th, 2019, and we're on 2 Cal Road in Arizona. You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life out there. For visuals while listening, search Life Out There on your favorite social media platform or use the links in the podcast description. Yup, you heard me right. 2 Cal Road. And you know us. If we come across a road called 2 Cal Road, we're going to see where that road goes. But let's start with how we got here. Leaving Scottsdale, we were told of a back way out of the city, a road that would get us out of town and back into the wide open desert quick. And it wasn't long before we found ourselves not far from that Tonto National Forest. The one that we'd admired from afar during our stay outside New River. And it was time to go check out that forest up close. We'd get just 50 miles or so outside Scottsdale, and we're already in the Tonto National Forest when we found an entrance to the Four Peaks Wilderness area. And since the entrance was a graveled road, we knew immediately it was our kind of place. The Tonto National Forest, a forest that covers approximately 2.9 million acres. It's massive, and it's the largest national forest in Arizona, and the 9th largest in the whole country. And reading that we were in the 9th largest national forest in the U.S., well, that made me curious. Where's the largest? So I just asked the internet to tell me the top 10. And it wasn't really a surprise to read that the 2 largest forests in the country are both in Alaska. First, the Tongass National Forest encompasses a mind-blowing 17 million acres. Yeah, Alaska has a national forest that covers more land than each of the 10 smallest states in the country. Besides being the largest national forest in the U.S., it's also the northernmost rainforest in the world, and is home to over 30,000 bear of all different species, and the largest bald eagle population in the world. And the second largest national forest, the Chugach National Forest, with its 6.9 million acres. Idaho also claims 2 spots on the top 10 with the Salmon Chalice National Forest at approximately 4.3 million acres, and the Nez Perce Clearwater National Forest, claiming around 3.3 million acres. And Wyoming is the third of only 3 states in the U.S. that can claim 2 on the list of top 10. The Bridger-Teton National Forest, roughly 3.4 million acres, and the Shoshone National Forest at around 2.4 million acres. And rounding out the top 10, the Humboldt-Toiyabe National Forest, which spans both Nevada and California, encompassing 6.3 million acres. The Gila National Forest of New Mexico at around 3.3 million acres, and the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest in Montana, also coming in at approximately 3.3 million acres. When we spent that night in Dillon, Montana, I had no idea that we were in the foothills of one of the nation's largest national forests. Nor did I know, just last night, that the Tonto National Forest also held this distinction. And we can't wait to see more of the national forests that are the biggest in the country. Although those 2 in Alaska might be a bit of a stretch, we'll definitely get there one day. But for now, we'll save that 2,200-mile and 40-hour drive through Canada to get there for another time. Sounds like a summer-long adventure in and of its own. And a quick side note, and another example of how a click on one more video can lead to a whole bunch more learning. Earlier today, I was scanning YouTube in search of a couple things. One, the proper pronunciation of Gila. That name spelled Gila, but pronounced Gila. And a little more about this reptile called a Gila Monster. It was then when I came across a video on the YouTube channel Brave Wilderness. The title of the video is Gila Monster Bite. I'll put a link in the show notes. This is the first place we'd been where I had seen the name Gila Monster on a list of critters all around us, which is why this video caught my eye. But I wasn't expecting to learn that the Gila Monster, which is a lizard by the way, can be found only in this part of the North American continent, the Sonoran Desert region. It's also one big lizard. These guys can grow to nearly 2 feet long and weigh 4 pounds or more. But most fascinating, the Gila Monster is one of very few lizards in the world known to be venomous. It's the only one in the U.S. And the only other known venomous lizards? Well, the Mexican beaded lizard, named for its presence primarily in Mexico, but can also be found in Guatemala. The Komodo dragon, native only to a few Indonesian islands, and the Guatemalan beaded lizard. These guys can only be found in a specific region of Guatemala and are extremely endangered. It's currently believed that there are less than 200 living in the wild. Now, the Gila Monster's venom is designed to subdue prey. If a human is bit, while extremely painful, with equally unpleasant side effects such as swelling, nausea, and dizziness, is not known to be fatal in humans. But here's a bizarre twist. In the last century, the only reported human fatality was an incident that occurred in Colorado, when a man died from complications after being bitten by his pet Gila Monster. But here's the most striking thing I heard during a 5-minute video. I'm going to quote the host of the video, a guy named Coyote. When referring to Arizona's Sonoran Desert, he stated, quote, "This environment is incredibly hostile, and if the heat doesn't get you, watch your step. The biological landmines just might." Close quote. He then goes on to show his Gila Monster bite taking place, along with random encounters with rattlesnakes and scorpions, circling back around to that incredibly hostile environment thing. For anyone out there watching the video version of this podcast on Spotify or YouTube, and at the risk of a copyright strike, here's a clip of that video so you can see for yourself.
Well, yesterday I took the worst animal bite I've ever received. It happened right here, and I was bitten by the only venomous lizard in the United States, the Gila Monster. And it was bad. Here's what happened. We were out here filming B-roll, walking up this wash that's on the back side here, and I spotted a Gila Monster, and he was just laying right here along this log. And I said, well, we don't need an episode with the Gila Monster, we've already done that, but we wanted to get close and at least get some B-roll shots. Didn't need to catch the lizard, didn't need to handle it. We got some great shots with the C100 camera, and I said, let me get a couple shots with the GoPro. He's super calm, he's just chilling out. Got close, started doing some sweeping shots over him. I think he felt cornered, I got a little too close, and literally in a flash, he jerked his body and latched onto my thumb. Immediately, my natural reaction was to pull my thumb back extremely quickly, which I did, and that's why I have all these razor blade looking slices on my thumb. I literally yanked my finger out of his mouth. I grabbed onto my finger the moment that I was bitten, and almost immediately the pain from the venom started surging through my hand. Oh my God, it burns already. It's burning really bad already. Oh God! He turned and just spun, and I got right past the GoPro and bit my thumb. Now, I was extremely fortunate in this situation. After the bite, we consulted with reptile experts and venom experts. Now, there's no anti-venom that you can take for a Gila Monster bite. We monitored my body for hours at a time. We made sure that my heart rate was low. We monitored the swelling. We took photographs, as you'll see some of the photographs here, as the hours went by. The pain was so excruciating, I really just had to go into a mental state where I told myself, you can make it through this pain. It was the worst pain I had ever experienced, the throbbing, the squirming of my body, and of course the constant fear that is this only going to get worse, because as the venom started traveling up my arm into my shoulder, I didn't know at what point it was going to stop, and that's when I really started to get nervous. And it was really mind over matter at that point. The fact that I didn't...
Now we've spent weeks, if not months, exploring and enjoying the desert, considering it rugged, beautiful, expansive, different, warm even. I mean, it is December. Perhaps endless, but never once considering it hostile, let alone incredibly hostile. But just as I'd learned back in Lake Havasu, that there is a scenario in which a hungry horned owl might carry Billie off into the night for a late snack, if given the opportunity, there are even more scenarios that could be equally terrifying. I now had an even more heightened awareness, and was thankful that walks with Dougie had already evolved from allowing him to run wild and freely checking out his new desert backyard each morning, to leashed walks. And we stick to the roads and trails, when there are roads and trails. And one final takeaway would be that we were actually here at the right time, if your objective is to avoid those venomous critters in the area, those rattlesnakes, scorpions, brown recluse spiders, and tarantulas. Seems they all tend to be more dormant, less active, and stick to their burrows and nests to conserve energy and body heat during the colder months. And one last note to self: avoid boondocking in the Sonoran Desert during the late spring and early summer, when just the opposite is true of these desert dwellers. And back to this Tonto National Forest, and its nearly 3 million acres. Given its size, it's no surprise that the forest spans across 4 counties here in Arizona: Gila, Maricopa, Yavapai, and Pinal. The forest features a wide range of elevations from about 1,400 feet in the Sonoran Desert to 7,400 feet in the ponderosa pine forests of the here we go again. Looking at a word spelled Mogollon, I'd fumble around a bit with Mogollon, but then finally resorted to YouTube to learn Mogollon? Mogollon. So there you have it. In 1,000 years, I don't feel like I'd have come up with Mogollon while looking at that word. And much the same as the Prescott National Forest, where we had camped a couple nights in Groom Creek, the characteristics of this forest change rapidly as you increase in elevation. And like each of the country's national forests, the Tonto National Forest offers numerous recreational opportunities, including hiking, camping, fishing, and boating. Some of the most popular spots include the Salt River, Roosevelt Lake, and the Superstition Wilderness. The Superstition Wilderness is just one of 8 federally designated wilderness areas within the forest. And in reading about it, and the legends, the stories, it's famous for legends of lost gold mines, particularly the Lost Dutchman's Mine, which continues to attract treasure hunters to this day. So it's easy to see why it's one of the most popular areas within the forest. And also, just like every national forest we've seen and read about, the forest is home to a variety of wildlife beyond the reptilian characters we had just learned about. You'll also find bald eagles, black bears, bobcats, mountain lions, ring-tailed cats, javelinas, coyotes, deer, and elk. So, yep, another popular hunting area. And it's always surprising to me, as I read of the abundance of wildlife in these areas, that we see so little of it. I guess they're all pretty good at avoiding us pesky humans. And after what I had just read and watched, fingers crossed they keep avoiding us. And why the name Tonto? The Tonto National Forest gets its name from the Tonto Basin, which lies at the forest's core. The name itself appears to have been born of an Apache word referring to the tough and wild people. The Tonto Apache, that inhabited the area for hundreds of years. Their earliest presence in the area dates all the way back to the 1300s. In the Spanish language, the term was used to mean fool or silly, and was most often used derogatorily when referring to those Tonto Apache. But when American culture got a hold of the term and applied it to a character in the 1949's Lone Ranger, the name Tonto would become universally recognized, accepted, and characterized as a trustworthy and loyal companion. Sitting alongside this dirt road for the night, in the Four Peaks Wilderness area, we'd learn that this wilderness area alone covers over 60,000 acres and is most known for its dramatic elevation changes ranging from 1,900 feet near Apache Lake to over 7,600 feet at Browns Peak, the highest of the four peaks for which the wilderness area is named. It was also interesting to read that a significant portion of this wilderness was devastated by fire in 1996. We saw little evidence of this. So, not sure if that's because we were not in an affected area, or if we were unknowingly observing the resilience of nature. It was also while sitting here, surrounded by all this raw and rugged beauty, that I'd stumble on a piece of, disheartening, annoying information. I'd read that in recent years, and increasingly, authorities were struggling to combat the illegal use of these public lands and protect it from certain segments of the population. Illegal encampments have popped up all across this wilderness. Tonto National law enforcement officers, in an attempt to patrol millions of acres, are finding hundreds of tents and trailers, even RVs, campers illegally living on these public lands for weeks, months, even years. And in doing so, they leave behind literally tons of abandoned trash and junked vehicles. In many cases, drug paraphernalia can be found amongst the debris left behind, reinforcing law enforcement's claims that a wide variety of illegal activity takes place. It all takes place out here in this wilderness, miles away from, and unknown to, the rest of us. Law enforcement go on to state that they come across many different types of campers. Some claim homelessness and no choice, while others simply claim to enjoy the lifestyle. And then, of course, the individual avoiding law enforcement for many reasons. The challenge of law enforcement is that they simply do not have the resources to physically remove folks that have illegally surpassed the 14-day camping rules in the national forests. The issue, it seems, persists within many of our national forests, but is more prevalent here in the Southwest and across the South, as the weather is much more forgiving during the winter months, allowing illegal camping in a more year-round setting. And while it appears many do it, I personally cannot imagine hanging out in a tent when it's 115 degrees outside, and there's a Gila Monster potentially somewhere near. As I read all this, I wondered why I had not yet seen any of these encampments. Perhaps had I gone just a bit deeper into any of the forests or deserts on which we had camped in these last few months, maybe I'd seen it with my own eyes. But at the same time, being fairly grateful that I hadn't. I also wondered how long those Gila monsters, rattlesnakes, and scorpions would put up with all this human silliness. For us, it had been but a day trip. We'd found our way to Cabin Creek Road, then graveled our way up to around 3,200 feet where we found the Cottonwood Trailhead staging area. Now that road continued here in the Four Peaks Wilderness area, and we likely could have gone much further. But the recent weather forecasts, including more rain, indicated that this was a good spot to call it good for now. We'd spend the afternoon and evening watching tour companies take adventure seekers up into the, here we go again, Mazatzal? Let's go with Mazatzal. We spent the afternoon and evening watching tour companies take adventure seekers up into the Mazatzal Mountains on ATVs. By sunset, the staging area was empty, and as we watched the last of the taillights trail back down that gravel road towards pavement, and enjoy the place to ourselves until the next morning, when the fun started up again, just shortly after dawn. From Four Peaks, we'd wander our way back down out of those mountains when we'd come across the Lake Pleasant Regional Recreation Center. And I wondered if this was part of the same complex we'd read about while just outside New River. And it was. The recreation center spanned some 22,000 acres, and we had been on the other side of it just a few days back. From the north entrance, there are large open areas just off the road where you can pull in and boondock right alongside the northern shores of the lake. And at the south end of the lake, there's a marina and an RV resort that folks frequent all year round. We spent the night here, just about 50 yards from the lakeshore, listening to those wild donkeys braying off in the distance. We hadn't heard them since Beatty, Nevada. And a boat launch just up the road from us was busy nearly all night long. I guess folks in Arizona take their fishing seriously. There weren't many photo ops here, as we arrived just before sunset and awoke to an overcast and rainy morning, signaling that perhaps we should move on. Find a spot maybe a little bit further from the shores of a lake, should that rain persist. It would be in that meandering and wandering our way out of the Lake Pleasant Regional Park when we couldn't resist the Castle Hot Springs dirt road. That dirt road that promised to take us further and higher into this desert. Which it did. Following that road a few miles, enjoying the scenic vistas of Lake Pleasant, well, that's when we saw the sign, 2 Cal Road, and a right turn, some careful navigation through a few muddy ruts in the road, and we found ourselves on a wide, apparently well-maintained, or well-traveled anyways, dirt road. We'd wander through valleys and then up again into the mountains, and after several miles, we'd find a large block of BLM land with a staging area for OHVs. And there were RVs scattered everywhere. Clearly, a popular boondocking area. And another clear sign that we'd found yet another perfect spot to spend a few more days in the quiet of Arizona's desert in December. Now, searching the internet for how a road comes to be called 2 Cal Road doesn't reveal much. What it does state is that 2 Cal Road is located in Maricopa County and within the Lake Pleasant Regional Park. That was interesting because I thought we'd long since left the park. And it also states that the area is a popular spot for visitors camping and hiking, which explains the RVs that peppered the landscape around us. So, as far as how it got its name, likely having something to do with the agricultural and ranching history in the area, but I guess it's left to one's own imagination. But on second thought, we'd also passed a road named Half Horse Road, so maybe leaving it up to one's imagination, not the way to go. After finding our spot, a perfect spot at the base of a set of rolling hills that seemed to wander endlessly into the horizon, we'd level up the RV and settle in for a stay. And then it was back to our usual desert habits. Long walks during the day, and reading of this place we find ourselves, and the places and things around us. For example, how many dams are around here? We'd not actually seen any of these dams, not since Parker anyway, although we've probably driven past many of the lakes that are a result of them. That Roosevelt Dam that we'd read about, located on the Salt River, built way back in 1911, but they added to this dam in the 1990s to increase its catchment area and capacity. And there's the Granite Reef Diversion Dam, actually constructed even before the Roosevelt Dam. This dam was completed in 1906 and built specifically to divert water from the Salt River into canals that supply the city of Phoenix. The Bartlett Dam, also on the Salt River, was added for flood control in the 1930s. And just upstream from the Bartlett Dam, the Horseshoe Dam, added in the 1940s for the same reason. This dam sort of sticks out on the list for me because it offers a unique experience. It has a walkway under the flow of water into the river, a feature or experience that's actually quite rare. In fact, if any others do exist, I didn't find them in my limited search on the internet. But what I did find was that the Grand Coulee Dam in Washington State offers lasered light shows as well as tours through the massive power generating plant within the dam. I hadn't even read that part when I actually learned of the dam during our stay in Quincy, Washington. And then as recently as 1994, the new Waddell Dam would be added, installed to expand Lake Pleasant, and it's vital to water storage in the area. All this water management in such a specific part of Arizona had made me rethink of that great Hohokam civilization, how it had grown and prospered in the deserts of Arizona for all those years, because they built that extensive canal system. But eventually, the limits of technology at the time would force them to move on. That's the most common held theory for why they would mysteriously disappear from the area. But then just some 500 years later, American settlers, equipped with engineering know-how of a different time, would create a water supply system that would eventually support millions of humans in that very same Arizona desert. And to be honest, I was surprised to read that there are over 500 dams in Arizona. Now at first, I thought that was a lot, until I read that places like Texas, Kansas, Missouri, Georgia, even Oklahoma, each have thousands of dams, over 4, 5, 6,000. Texas has over 7,400 dams. Wow, pretty impressive. How the U.S. government, along with state agencies, had figured out so skillfully how to get nature's liquid life from where it is to where we need it, or want it. And most of it has been accomplished in just the last 100 years. And then one evening, while drifting off to sleep, I'd remember of a conversation in Scottsdale, in which I'd learn of a place called Bisbee, Arizona. And hearing slogans applied to the town like, "Keep Bisbee Weird," or "The City in a Bowl," and even "Mayberry on Acid." With nicknames like that, maybe we'd head in that direction next. Check out this place called Bisbee, or Mayberry on Acid. And I wonder what we'll learn there. Turns out, this thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously, you can.